Okay. Uh, my name's Mark, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm glad to see everybody here. I see somebody I've worked with, Barry, who I believe you have 2 years. And anyways, so a little bit of my story here. You ready for that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Grew up pretty much like a regular kid. Semi-dysfunction family. My dad was an alcoholic, kind of a functioning alcoholic. Like, I don't think he ever missed a day of work in his life. But I grew up like any other kid. I played baseball. I had scouts. I rode mini bikes. I had a lot of friends. I got in trouble. Everything a kid can possibly do. My dad was a jazz trumpet player. So, but he played with a couple of people that were kind of famous. So they would have like Pearl Bailey over the house, like playing pinochle, and I remember the first time I drank, I was about 8 years old, and our refrigerator opened and blocked the door where they were playing cards. And I was drinking out of this wine jug and literally got drunk. I'm not really saying that was the seed of my alcoholism, but it was just kind of something that happened that I remember. But one thing, when I was 8 years old, a lot of people think kids don't know what's happening. I knew cross tops used to fall out of my dad's pocket when he'd fall asleep out on he'd use the chair cushion to put his head down on the ground watching TV, and there'd be change, and I'd see those cross tops. I also knew where his joint stash was. I knew where all his vodka bottles were. One time he told me he played baseball. He was my baseball coach like every year from 8 to 18. And he said he played semi-pro. So one time I was looking in their closet to see if he had an old uniform in there. And when I was moving his coat, because he was a businessman at the time, there was all this clanking. And I looked in the pockets, and there was like a pint of vodka empty in every pocket of his jacket. But like I said, even though he drank like, hard alcohol, he somehow managed to support the family. And that was part of the reason that he retired from music at a young age, to support my little brother, me, my mother. And anyway, so when I was 9 years old, he bought me a guitar, and I kind of became obsessed with that. Went along, learned from neighbors, still played baseball and did everything other kids do, but that was just part of, almost like a hobby. But I did really love it. And off and on, I was playing guitar for years, all the way up, by the time I was 15, I was getting pretty good on it. And that's when the kind of partying with friends, mostly like on the weekends, we'd go camping or something and drink beer. The funny thing is I've never really, like, my drug of choice has always been alcohol. And I just always drank beer. And gradually, the spaces in time, by the time I got in my 20s, I was drinking 2 or 3 times a week. And then by the time I was when my band, I'm in a rock band, and we got signed when I was, I think, 25 years old, almost 25. And by the time I was 26, I was getting pain and, from hangovers, but also I had the shakes, so when the alcohol would wear off, I'd wake up in the morning and my hands were shaky. I didn't roll out of bed and start drinking whiskey, but I seemed to always kind of have a beer in my hand. And so I kind of knew then that I had a problem. One of the things, I'm kind of a high strung guy. I think I inherited my mother's nervous system, which is a bad thing. I inherited everything that's bad about my parents. I inherited my dad's alcoholism and my mom's nervous system. So it's more intense when the alcohol would wear off. My nerves would be bad because of the detoxing. Plus, like I said, I'm kind of high strung anyway. So I was doing what I call chasing normal, because it wasn't like I wanted to be wasted by 10 a.m. or noon. I just didn't want to feel bad and I didn't want to be shaky. So I drank, 2, 3, or 4 beers and I was fine. So I go, oh, great, beer cures everything. And so I went along, but, a lot of times people have said, well, the industry you're in, God, it must be hard because, everybody parties. But that really has nothing to do with my alcoholism. It's just something embedded in me. I could pump gas, I could work in a cubicle, and I would still be an alcoholic. It has nothing, it's not attached to what I do for a living. I don't really think it even cares what I do for a living. It's so it was a case where it progressively got worse with my hangovers, my shakiness, and also I've always had in this embedded fear, and I can't even explain it. In little social gatherings, say with like you guys, like this would make me have a heart attack without having, using alcohol as a vehicle to make it easier. So that was fear was the biggest trigger for me. I would use alcohol to get through, what I would consider tough spots. But it never bothered me that much to go and play in front of 200,000 people in a festival. What bothered me was to play my acoustic for 10 people, in an intimate setting, or go to a little social gathering where you got to speak with people. So when I first started getting sober was in 1991. I knew my band was going to intervene on me. I could feel it because it was starting to affect my responsibilities. Like I said, I was constantly chasing normal, so I didn't want to feel like crap when I had to do things. But, sometimes I'd drink a little too much and I'd be a little sloppy. It was hard to really control that. So when we were going to have this meeting, I knew they were going to intervene on me. So I told them I kind of know what this is about and I want to get help. I don't know how to quit drinking. I've never tried it before. I know nothing about, how to do it. What do I go to a rehab or, go to some meeting or something? I was really ignorant to programs and 12-step groups and all that. I had no clue. And so I went to Arizona. I went into a rehab. I was pretty attentive. There was a couple people that were famous that I knew from my industry there. So I was listening, but some of the stuff I wasn't believing, like that the disease is progressive. That was one thing I didn't believe. because I never tested it before. Now that I know it is progressive, I actually found that out the hard way. But, in other words, say you don't drink for 2 years, when you go back and drink, it's worse than it was when you quit. And I didn't believe I thought you would have to drink for a while to get as bad as you were before. So when I left after 30 days out of rehab, I learned some things, but I didn't do all the follow-ups. I didn't do everything they said. I went to a couple meetings, but in the program they call it having one foot in the door and one out. In other words, I would be looking at the clock like I couldn't wait to leave, Um, so I was able to remove alcohol for sometimes 10 months. Sometimes I'd do it for even longer, like 2 years. But I was so jealous of people that could drink normal. I kept trying, going back and giving it a go, and kept failing. And so I just, believe it or not, it took me 17 years of going in and out. Finally, I just threw my arms in the air and just said, God, please help me, and this time when I went into AA, I went with both feet and my ears wide open. I talked to people that had 30 plus years sobriety. I listened to everything they said. I got a sponsor. I worked steps. And my sober date is 11/2/2008. I actually, for the first time ever, I was honest with not only myself, but my wife. I called her from the road. I was in Utah. I told her I drank, but when I get home, I'm going to go head first into the program. I'm really going to listen this time and really, get into the one day at a time and really work on myself. And the difference is before is I just removed alcohol. I didn't work on my character defects. I wasn't working on my fears. I didn't do anything. I still lied. I was lying before, even though I wasn't drinking. I was still. That's the only thing that was different, is I wasn't drinking. The difference is this time is I got a sponsor who helped me do things that help me work through my fears, because I learned to identify my triggers, what it is that makes me drink, and worked on those things. And the way I worked on my fears was I would confront people. I wouldn't keep things in. If somebody was saying something derogatory, I would have a way to confront that. And I practiced that, and I confronted people just over and over and over again. And eventually, over time, all the things I used to be afraid of were not worth being afraid of. And that really helped me, because fear was one of my biggest things that made me think about drinking, actually drinking. And, so I wanted to do everything possible to make it as easy on myself as possible. And that was working the steps. And one thing I held on for dear life, and I still do, is the one day at a time. When I roll out of bed, I pray to God that I can stay sober today, and I thank Him before I go to sleep. And I do that every single day. And when I work with a newcomer and he tells me I'm done and I'm never going to drink again, I'm scared to death for him, because you're putting up an impossible task. I mean, I know I could never not drink again. I mean, but I know I cannot drink today. I've done it over and over again, but I am not cocky in my sobriety. I'm not at all. I never comfortable I'm comfortable in my own skin sober today. That's one thing I can say, which I wasn't before. I needed to drink, to feel comfortable. I don't need that anymore. I, it's a much better life being sober today. It's a much easier life. It's really hard work being an active alcoholic. I mean, I was constantly, I'll say it again, chasing normal. I'd have to drink to get there. So it was actually work. It was work to get there. And then also what happened is the cycle would repeat itself over and over and over. It's the biggest nightmare ever. 11 years ago, I had about 3 years, a little over 3 years sobriety. And I wonder what would happen if I reached out on Facebook and just offered my sober friendship, encouragement, and support to anybody out there suffering or struggling with alcohol, drinking. Guy got a hold of me. And that day, this guy was rolling out of bed, literally lived in Nashville. He was a fan of my band. And he would get out of bed and fill up a big gulp cup of whiskey just to start his day. And his wife, this day that I made the post, said that she was still supportive and still kind of enabling him, but said, I just, it's so hard to watch you dying. I don't want to watch you dying anymore. I can't stand to watch you dying. And that it crushed him. And then he saw my post, and it was like he was almost like he was getting a calling of some sort. And I spoke with him, and I was able to get him into a rehab in Nashville through this Music Cares, it's called, who helps musicians, and they help families. They do Al-Anon, families of addicts, and they help with the finances to get you into treatment. So they got him into treatment, and within a 5-year period, he went from patient to counselor. So that initial post and the fact that guy got sober really got me into it. Today, I've worked with probably around 150 people one-on-one, and it's really kept me grounded. It's great. One thing I love about AA meetings is the fellowship. I've always loved the fellowship, because even today, when I go to a meeting, I come home and I tell my wife, "You're not going to believe what this one guy, his share was my story perfect." It's unbelievable how many people have the same story as you. You can relate to it. And the fellowship to me is important for anybody. I don't care how far you're into your sobriety, but for newcomers, it's great I think for a newcomer to hear that, hey, you're not alone. I'm in the same boat as you. I got a little more time than you, but we're in this together, buddy, and anything you need, just let me know. Here's my number. It just, when you have the support, you're not alone. That's what makes AA such a great thing. I've never promoted AA on the internet or anything like that. All I offer is my sober friendship, my support, and encouragement. And when I get one-on-one, I share my story, and I figure, maybe they can take a couple things from it that would help them. But if they choose to do it some other way, obviously their way isn't working. I know my way didn't work. That's why I just gave it to God and finally surrendered like 100% with every part of my being. I completely surrendered to alcohol. You won. You're the greatest. You won. I'm going to do something different. And when people used to tell me your life is going to get so much better, I realize now that they were being absolutely truthful. So many things have went my way. It completely changed my life with my relationship, just every part of my life. Just being honest, you know, I just can't tell you how much better my life is. And when I drank, my world was so dark. It was like there was a cloud over me, and the world was very small, and things were bad things would happen to me all the time. And it was just, I was just living wrong. I was just living wrong. And there's a lot to say about the addiction. I'm very compulsive, and I have to watch myself. Everything I do, I have to be a world champion. I really have to watch my compulsive ways, which I do. I really police myself. Um, Watching sick people get well has been one of my favorite things in life. Uh, Seeing somebody's transition with their physical appearance is even like amazing to look at. And seeing somebody get their family back, get their job back. I've seen that more than once. It, like I said, it's just a better way to live when you're not living in pain, and you're honest, and you become a better person, that wants to help others. you know i I wasn't the most giving person either when I used to drink. I mean, I was, like I said, I really needed to work on my character. And I've learned that when you help someone and see a sick person get well that's an alcoholic, and they start doing well, and they got a year, and they're pumping their fists and going, dig it, I got a year. you know we celebrate with my online thing a lot, that Stephen, you have shared, with the dailies, the meditation, the prayers, the AA messages from Bill W. There's just a lot of good things. um, I get phone calls on dailies sometimes that somebody's saying, man, that hit home, and they'll tell me why it hit home, and it's just wonderful. um, so those dailies, I read them every day. I I love it. One thing that also helped me is my wife got sober the same time I did. She was kind of she was has anxiety. She was getting panic attacks, and she used marijuana uh, to help with that. But when she didn't have the marijuana, it was intensified, just like with my alcoholism. So she quit, but after 30 days, she had so much anxiety that she smoked again, but hated it, and got right into the program and really worked hard. Today, she doesn't need anything and does really well. Um, so we're a month apart with our sobriety dates, but I'm telling you, it makes it easy when you live in a sober household. It makes it easier, um, you know, that you don't have to live with your early part of your sobriety. You don't have to live through somebody drinking, or you get jealous. You're like, God, she can drink and I can't. This is awful. It just makes it difficult, I think. So when I work with newcomers, I really try to identify their triggers, because I really want to get to that, and I want to work on it, and just to try to make it easier and get them going on the steps, and have them look for a sponsor, somebody they can call. I give them my number, and so, you know, it took me a long time to get sober, and that's, you know, it's because, like I said, I had one foot in the door and one out. I wasn't like dead serious about true sobriety, which is self work, remove the alcohol, become a better person. You know, work on your health, maybe have an exercise program. It gives you a lot more time to, you know, if you have a business, you got more time for that. You got more time to love your family. You got more time to be a good husband, a good grandfather, a good dad, you know. And it also, you know, getting sober for your kids or your wife or who, you know, just anybody else is not recommended. And I know why now, because as soon as they get happy and trusting, you might relapse, you know, as soon as you know, that's why it's better just to get sober for yourself, because you want to be sober. You know, like I've heard newcomers say that a lot too. Oh, my kids hate me drunk, you know, so I'm going to get sober. I just, I've seen that fail. So I, I always suggest that, you know, and like I said, it's just a suggestion. I am not doing program Nazi stuff here. I'm just sharing what worked for me, and it's worked well. I've had, you know, I'm, you know, going on 15 years sobriety, but I do it one day at a time. So it's all about today. But you know, I celebrate like a Mo. Like when I get a, you know, when I come up on a year, I go to tons of meetings. I get a lot of chips. I, you know, take cakes, man. I'm like, yeah, another year, right on. You know, I think that's important that you celebrate your time. Um, it makes your family proud. My band members are super proud of me. They know the old me and the new me. They prefer the new me. Um, and when I wake up every day, I feel like, you know, I might not feel so great some days, but I feel similar every day, which is great. You know, I don't wake up and have that guilt and the shame and the pain and, you know, have to figure out how I'm going to wash it away with some alcohol that's only going to work temporarily. It's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare to live that way. And, you know, I love it when people have success. I I don't know what the numbers are on the success rate in AA. I've heard different ones, but I've seen a lot of success on the guys I've worked with, and it's really good to look at that. Really give these guys kudos. I'm really proud of them because they all work hard, you know, and you know, so it's a strange thing, you know, to be an alcoholic, you know, and normal people don't get it. They just don't. They Why don't you just stop? You know, what's your problem? You know, they don't understand that it's a disease. They don't buy it. They don't believe it. How can it be a disease? You just stop, dude. Just stop. You know. But I know better, and I've accepted that I'm an alcoholic. I really have. You know, it's something that I deal with, but it's I'm fine with it because it today, being a sober alcoholic, I've learned how to improve myself because I was kind of put in that position. I don't want to say forced. I just want to say because of my disease, I'm in the position that I need to work on myself. And I'm glad I'm in that position. because if I was a sober guy, I might just be a liar and a cheater and who knows what, you know. So I'm glad that I, you know, tried to become a better person. I'm still work on it, you know, we can always get better. And so I don't know how many people are in the group, but just the ones I see here.
No, there's 167 people here right now.
Okay, good. Well, if anybody's new, I can just tell you when I really decided to get sober, I went in and I can tell you, if you go to an AA meeting, just go up to the guy that's running the meeting and ask questions. Try to get involved. And it's the most difficult is in the beginning. But if you just listen and take direction, you can do it, and you can not. It's much better to not live in pain and have all this heartache. And you know, I can tell you, man, my life is so much better now, and you can have a blast being sober, because that's one of the things that I was worried about. It's like, how can I have fun? How can I, you know, have any fun at all if I can't even party down, you know? But I can, and I am having fun, and it's just a great life. I'm glad there's 160 some people here, and I really hope that you know, just take some of the things I say if you think it can help, and then. But the main thing you should do is at least go try AA if you're an alcoholic. If you're an addict, if drugs are your problem, get to an NA meeting. It's just the same. It's like just insert your drug. I figure if there's 167 people in here, then there's some out there that might be new, and you might maybe you have pain, maybe you want a life change. I know there's people out there that maybe are thinking about getting sober, but really don't know how to go about it, you know. So just maybe need an encouraging word, you know. And I'm trying to give you that tonight. I want to be encouraging, because I know what it's done for my life, and I've seen what it's done for others that have gotten well and, you know, quit hurting themselves. It's very difficult, but things, and I've been told this by others, so I'm sharing what they told me. It gets better and better and better. I promise. It really, really does. I've seen it for myself, with others and myself. So it's a wonderful thing, man. You know, during that 17 years when I was just removing alcohol, when I was going back, it was because of my jealousy of normal drinkers. I really thought I could do it. And maybe I would for a few days, not drink the next day, roll out of bed and start drinking. But eventually the space came closer and I was right back. Same result every time, pain. And I finally gave in, man. The thing is you have to give in before the bottom becomes death. You know, I mean, that is truly the bottom. I've lost friends. I've worked with a guy that used to respond positively to the dailies, and I just didn't hear from him for one day. And he went to some motel and drank himself to death. I just couldn't. That's it. And he had some time. That's what I mean. The disease really doesn't care about your time, but you should. In other words, I don't care if you have 20 years, and I've seen people slip after 20 years. It's just like they say, you go right back to the same amount of pain. You go right back to the pain, but it's worse than it was when you quit. I know that sounds impossible, but it's an absolute 100% fact. And the reason you can celebrate time, but don't get cocky in your own sobriety because a bunch of years rolled by. That happens on its own. That really, you just have to stay focused on the one day at a time. That's the main thing. I really feel it makes anything easier that you can just do today. Let's just work on today. We don't even know if we're going to be here tomorrow. Yesterday's history, so who cares? Let's just be the best we can be today, So what do you think, Stefan?
We're good. You done?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, guys.